Council, ladies and gentlemen. It's notwithstanding the clocks on the wall, the other clocks in the room differ, and we're saying it's 6 o'clock. My computer says it's 6:01, my watch says it's 6 o'clock, the clock on the wall says it's 1 minute to, so we're starting. And I'll call the 6 o'clock p.m. September the 6th, 2022 Municipal Council meeting to order. Welcome everyone back, everyone around the table. In particular, we've taken the opportunity to pause our meetings for the month of August, so we're all new, tanned, and back here to become pale once again. And welcome to you in the audience this evening, and to those who might be listening. We begin each meeting with roll call, so if we could do that now, please. And for the purposes of the general public, we take all votes and conduct roll call electronically so that it appears in the electronic record. All councillors are present with the exception of Councillor Windsor, who has not contacted us, I don't believe, so we anticipate that he will arrive. Item number 2 on the agenda is the motion to approve the agenda itself. All councillors have had an opportunity to review it. It's moved by Councillor Allen, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, that the agenda be approved. Any errors or omissions, additions? Seeing none, call for the question, please. All those in favor or otherwise, please vote now. The results of each vote for the purposes of the audience can be seen on the screen. The agenda has been approved unanimously, and when agendas are approved, that's the point in time at which each councillor can examine whether there is anything on the agenda with which they might have a personal conflict. So if they wish to declare a conflict of interest, this is their opportunity to do so. If there's a conflict of interest associated, if a councillor determines they have a conflict of interest associated with any item of the agenda, they would declare it now and then absent themselves from the discussion and the vote on it, on that item, as it comes up later in the agenda. Is there any conflict to be declared? No? Proceeding then to item 4, approval of the minutes of July 5th, 2022 Council. Could I have a motion to approve? And a seconder? Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Moved by Councillor Harding. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor or otherwise, please vote now. And I'll ask after we deal with the approval of the minutes of the Special Council of July 26th, whether there's any business arising from either of those meetings. This motion has been approved unanimously. Is there anyone who's prepared to move the adoption of the minutes of July 26th? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Allen. Any discussion on the motion? Deputy Mayor, would you please wait till I get your light on? It's been a long time. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor Mattart. Nothing too controversial, just that Councillor Meisner's name, it has a typo in it on page 23.
Okay, thanks for pointing that out. Councillor Meisner missed it. All right, any other errors or omissions that we should bring forward? Seeing none, then all those in favor or otherwise of the motion to approve, please vote now. That motion is unanimously approved. Thank you. Now, is there any business arising from the minutes of July 5th that anyone has identified that they wish to bring up this evening? Seeing none, is there any business arising from the minutes of July 22nd which anyone wishes to raise? Seeing none, we'll move to item 6, Planning and Development Services. Site plan approval hearing, Taylor Road, South Berwick. I'll be looking to Ms. Armstrong to present on that. Ms. Armstrong, please, when you're ready.
So we are here tonight to hear an appeal of decision of the development officer to approve a site plan for a residential use in the agricultural zone on Taylor Road in South Berwick. Oh no.
Sometimes that particular clicker doesn't work. There, it moved now. There you
Okay.
go.
Good, thank you. So as you are likely aware, the previous land use bylaw had many qualifiers to create residential building lots in the agricultural zone. The current land use bylaw has reduced the ability to just one qualifier, which is often referred to as infill. The idea behind this approach is that there will be limited additional impact on agricultural uses in the area given the existing residential uses. There will also be a limited amount of land not used for agricultural production. New residential uses are permitted between two dwellings that are no further than 300 feet apart, or in the case of a corner lot, between a dwelling and a public road. Once the development officer has determined that the area of land qualifies as a residential building lot, the next step is to go through site plan approval. Site plan approval for new residential uses in the agricultural zone has been used since 2008. Site plans are a tool to further control development that is permitted in the land use bylaw. Site plan approval may address items such as the location of structures on the lot, vegetation or landscaping, and outdoor lighting. In the case of new residential uses in the agricultural zone, the site plan is used to control the location of the building envelope and the property owner acknowledgement that the dwelling is located in an agricultural area. The land use bylaw requires residential uses to locate as close to the front lot line as possible and states that the dwelling and all accessory buildings shall be within 150 feet of the front lot line. By locating residential development close to the front lot line, the land further from the road can continue to be used or has the potential to be used for agricultural uses. The site plan approval process is outlined in the Municipal Government Act and requires notification to all property owners within 30 meters of the property boundaries. This notice will identify that a site plan has been approved and provide the information on the right to appeal the decision within a 14-day period. Once the site plan process is complete, the property owner may apply for the building and development permit for the new residential use. The property owners bought 272 Taylor Road, South Berwick in 2020. The property has a one-unit dwelling on almost 6 acres of land close to the intersection with Highway 1. In January of 2022, the municipality approved a building and development permit to replace the existing deck on the rear of the dwelling and to extend it further to the south. A surveyor provided confirmation that the nearest applicable point of this existing dwelling and the nearest applicable point of the dwelling to the south were within 300 feet at the required front setback. The land use bylaw definition of existing means any use, structure, lot line, or other referenced item that legally existed on the date of the adoption of this bylaw. The section in the A1 zone on residential uses states, new residential uses are permitted between two dwellings in existence on the date of adoption of this bylaw that are no more than 300 feet apart. It further states existing dwellings are required to have been in existence on the date of adoption of this bylaw. It does not state the distance apart is to have been in existence. The dwellings in existence is the qualifier, and the measurement to the nearest applicable point on this is the condition. When measuring setbacks from property lines and separation distances from watercourses, the nearest applicable point is used. The definition of setback further identifies that the nearest applicable point includes attached decks, but it excludes features that are permitted to project into the required setback. These features are listed in the permitted encroachments section and include architectural features such as eaves and gutters, window bays, and mechanical features such as air conditioners and oil tanks. Decks are considered an applicable point of the dwelling that must meet the required setbacks in the zone and are also relevant when meeting the condition in this section. The purpose of the approach to new residential development in the agricultural zone is to reduce the impact on agricultural land by only permitting new dwellings where there is already residential development. The qualifier is that the dwellings on either side of the proposed building lot had to be present in November of 2019 when the bylaw was adopted. The condition is that two dwellings are no more than 300 feet apart. It is reasonable to permit the existing dwellings to construct an addition that would then meet the condition. The alternative to this is that two dwellings exist and an addition is constructed, but we still do not consider the condition having been met. The impact on agricultural land is not more without that addition. The other conditions still must be met, such as lot frontage and maximum distance from the front property line. A plan of subdivision to create the new residential building lot was approved and recorded at the Land Registration Office on April 27th, 2022. The approval to construct the deck addition, the determination that the area of land met the criteria to permit a new residential use, and the approval to subdivide a residential building lot is as of right development in the land use bylaw and are decisions of the development officer. These approvals are not subject to appeal by outside parties. The only options for appeal are if these applications were refused. In the case of a refusal, the applicant may appeal my decision to the Utility and Review Board. The residential building lot is shown in the middle of this photo. As mentioned earlier, prior to being able to approve a permit, the new residential use is subject to site plan approval to control the location of the dwelling and accessory buildings and to ensure the property owner is aware that the dwelling is located in an agricultural area. The property owner submitted the application for site plan approval as well as a site plan graphic prepared by a surveyor. The site plan graphic shows a building envelope that is compliant with the requirement that all residential uses are located within 150 feet of the front property line. Site plan terms and conditions were prepared to further identify that the dwelling and residential accessory buildings are limited to the building envelope identified in the graphic. It also states that the property owners acknowledge that the dwelling is located in an agricultural area. The property owners signed this agreement on May 25th, 2022, indicating that they agree to carry out the terms of this site plan approval. As the site plan application has met the criteria in the land use bylaw and the applicant has agreed to the terms of this site plan, approval was given and letters were mailed to the two property owners within 30 meters of the property boundaries. The letter identified that a site plan had been approved and provided the information on the right to appeal with a deadline of June 10th, 2022. Both property owners submitted a written appeal within this period. These appeals have been included in the agenda package for tonight, and the appellants may speak further on their appeal as part of this presentation. The MGA provides further guidance if an appeal is received. It states, the council, in hearing an appeal concerning a site plan approval, may make any decision that the development officer could have made. As the only matter needing decision at this stage is the site plan approval, this brings us back to the earlier section that states the site plan shall be approved unless the matters subject to site plan approval do not meet the criteria set out in the land use bylaw, or the applicant fails to enter into an undertaking to carry out the terms of the site plan. The matters subject to site plan approval are the dwelling and all accessory buildings shall be within 150 feet of the front lot line and written acknowledgement that the dwelling is located in an agricultural area. My recommendation for tonight is a motion to uphold the decision of the development officer to approve the site plan. If council approves the site plan, the property owner is able to move forward with the next stage and apply for a building and development permit for the new residential use. The site plan, land use bylaw, and building requirements will be administered as part of the permit approval and construction. Should council find that they do not think the matter subject to site plan approval met the criteria set out in the land use bylaw, or the applicant failed to enter into an undertaking to carry out the terms of the site plan, the alternative motion would be to refuse the site plan application. This would mean the development officer would also refuse a building and development permit application for a new residential use. The refusal of a development permit is subject to an appeal by the applicant and would go to the Utility and Review Board if appealed. So that concludes my portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. If you'd remain in place in the event there are questions from council on clarification. Are there any questions by any councilors to clarify the presentation? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Matart, through you. Should the alternative motion be successful, is there further steps for an appeal on the folks who applied for the site plan approval? Because could there be a further appeal?
So through you, Mayor Matart, to the Deputy Mayor, they would not be able to appeal the refusal of the site plan at that point. So if they applied for the building permit and I refused that because we didn't have a valid site plan in place, they could appeal my refusal of the development permit and go to the board.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions or clarification? Well, thank you, Ms. Armstrong. We might call upon you again, but is there anyone from the audience? We have correspondence on this, of course, that all council has received and considered before they came this evening, but anybody who wrote such correspondence who wishes to speak or hasn't written correspondence and wishes to speak on the matter, you're welcome to come to the podium at the center of the room. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Yes, please come up. And if, as you come up, when you reach the podium, would you mind just giving your name and place of residence, please?
My name is Shirley Rogers, and I live on 289 Taylor Road.
Okay. Would you mind saying it again into the microphone?
Shirley Rogers, 289 Taylor Road.
Okay. I apologize for you
the sun.
having to stand in the sunlight, but we need you there so that we can get you on the microphone.
So I had two objections in, and I don't know, the counselors didn't get them beforehand? They don't get to read
Yes,
these?
we do, yes.
Oh, because Mr. Kellum didn't seem to know anything about them. But
Well.
you do all have a copy.
Yes.
Okay. And my first one was 3 years ago when I came in to pay my taxes. My daughter had talked about retiring in Halifax, and we didn't know whether she was going to build or buy or whatever. A lady who I thought was rather rude at the time informed me that I should keep up on the regulations because the whole valley was now rezoned agriculture, and no, you could not build on it. Now, I don't know why I would have been, but now since that, I have received 2 proposals, and number 3 for a trailer site in our area. So the agriculture land is no longer agriculture land, it's now being used for building lots.
Well, the answer to that is it must qualify under certain regulations established by the municipality. So if you're going to develop something in an agricultural area, it needs to be something that's permitted by our bylaws.
But the bylaws says you only have to have 300 feet between residents. I have 25
No,
acres.
the bylaw says that you mustn't have more than 300 feet
Yeah.
between residences.
Yeah.
So it's trying to say if the lot is small enough that it'll fit between 2 residences that are 300 feet apart, then it might as well be a building lot because that's perhaps arbitrarily, what's been decided is an area that's not really subject to agricultural operation.
So I don't know why she was so adamant to tell me no at that point, because I mean, I must have fallen in all the regulations with 25 acres with one property on it.
Yeah, it's pretty hard for us to address that at
Well,
this
it
point,
is, but
yes.
some of these things you come into council and you get put down before you even, start. And my other grievance was in 1989, when I built my house, the hill on Taylor Road, which is now has the markings for a driveway, the Department of Agriculture told me that I could not build where I wanted to build. I had to move my lot towards the North Mountain, way over 200 feet, because they would not put another driveway on that hill because it was too dangerous. Now we find markings there where the Department of Highway have marked off a driveway right on top of the hill.
Well, regrettably, we don't control the Department of Highways, so certainly
So now
we do have our own bones to
Yeah,
pick with them
yeah,
from time
yeah.
to time, but we
So-
consult with them.
So that hill is not dangerous anymore?
Apparently, in their opinion, it's not for
Okay.
some reason or other.
So
Sometimes
we just
it's-
hope there's no accidents, I guess. That's my thing, that the rules are not the same for everybody in Kings County. That is my bottom line.
Yes, well, the one you referred to earlier, I can't answer to, or we can't answer to, without going back to your actual situation and
Yeah.
your application and who
Yeah.
answered your question and so on. The one that you just mentioned with the Department of Highways is totally under the control of the government of Nova Scotia, so that I presume they apply an even hand across the province and don't discriminate against Kings County, and I think I'm safe in that assumption.
So, like I say, the dangerous aspect has gone now. in the
Perhaps
last-
something has changed that I'm not aware of, but you're implying to me that nothing's changed. Is that correct?
That's right. The
Yeah.
hill's still there. I had to move my lot to the north. Probably more traffic than there's ever been now, because a lot of people don't go to Southborough Corner. They use Taylor Road. It's safer and less traffic, But I'm just wondering why now we're building in residential buildings, which is going to be more traffic. But like I said, I guess we just hope there's no accidents there.
Yes. Well, I'm told within the whole of Kings County, we only have 300 such lots, so this happens to be one of them. But
That
we certainly do thank you for bringing those items
Okay,
forward.
thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on? Yes, sir. Again, as well, if you wouldn't mind stating your name when you reach the mic and your
Murray
place.
Jones, Taylor Road, next door neighbor to the person that's applying for the permit. Not going to be very good at this because I don't like public speaking at all. Anyway, I understand what Megan has said, but there's a lot of problems I have with this. The one, agricultural, A1 zone. The county themselves have said that the agricultural land will supersede anything else. The land that we're talking about had a crop on it 4 years ago, commercial crop, property, had a commercial crop on it 4 years ago. Yes, this is an infill house, supposedly not going to take up much land, but the county is allowing a house to be built on A1 land and leaving it as A1. What are you going to do, tear the house down in 5 years and plant a crop on it? I don't think that's going to happen. That's part of the problem with this process, is a letter should have went out, not after May, after it was approved. The letter should have went out when the application was made to change this property. It would have had two neighbors that weren't squabbling right now. You guys have caused us to have problems. I think, Kevin may correct me on this, but I think Kevin and I were fine before this has taken place. So you, the county, have caused two neighbors to be into a squabble by not sending out a letter on day one. And it should be sent out, because it is a change of use. It may be, you guys may consider it A1 still, but it is not A1 when there's duplex sitting in the middle of it. Plain and simple. That's one thing. The other thing is that, unless I've typed this out wrong, new residential uses are permitted between two dwellings in existence on the date of the adoption of this bylaw. In existence on the date of the adoption of this bylaw. You guys say nothing in here about being able to build a piece on afterwards. There was a deck on that house existing at the date of the adoption of this bylaw. Certain size deck. It was never changed until after you guys told the person, if you build a deck on, we'll let you build a duplex. That's quite convenient. So you're changing the size of that house after the adoption of this bylaw, which is what you guys have written here. I'm reading it off. That are no more than 300 feet apart. Without the deck being built on, it is over 300 feet apart. I have yet to see anything that shows me that the house is within 300 feet, even with the deck, let alone without it. I've never seen what my next door neighbor's going to build on paper. I know that it's a duplex. You guys don't even say that in your correspondence to me, ever, that it's a duplex, not a single family dwelling. The mayor wrote something in the letter the other day, Mr. Mayor. Municipal bodies must always know the needs of others and must be willing to cooperate and assist one another. In this whole process, Kevin is trying to get ahead, trying to build a duplex, trying to better his family. It's not Kevin's problem at all. I feel if that letter would have been sent out at the start, even though it isn't a change of use, it should be a change of use, and all of you know it. Once you build a duplex on it again, it's no longer going to be A1. You're not going to be able to farm it. Maybe the rest of the property, but not that piece of land for sure. That should be changed, and we get a letter early. Then instead of being a fight, it would have been a discussion at the start. That's one thing that needs to be done, regardless of what comes out of this. That has to be done. That's just craziness. Part of this also is because I have 15 acres of land right next to it. I want to build a single-story house. I've talked to Emily about this because my legs are bad, my wife's back is bad. County is trying to keep people in their homes longer because there's no place in the seniors' homes to go. But yet I can't build a house on 15 acres, but right next door a duplex can be built. So if you want to look at the fairness of, and this has nothing to do with bylaws, this is the fairness of the situation. That is not fair. I'm trying to stay in my property. I'm not trying to build a house to make money off of, I'm not trying to rent. I just want a house I can live in for the next 15 years. And I can't do that because of your rules. But yet, within 50 feet of my deck, I'm going to have a duplex and a double driveway because what my sister didn't know was they've approved a driveway right on the hill, but it's going to be right on my property line, basically. Because the driveway for both duplexes are going in one spot. It's not going to be two driveways. Which, again, to me is not fair. I bought a piece of land in rural Kings County because it's privacy. I didn't buy a lot in a subdivision. I didn't build a house in a subdivision. I had an expectation of privacy when I bought my house. I might add that the house has been in my family for 200 years. Paid taxes for 200 years, and now all of a sudden you're told what you can and cannot do with your own property. And within 60 feet of me, I'm going to have a duplex. Fairness isn't entering into this picture whatsoever. And that isn't the rules. I agree. But again, I go back to two things. One, Kevin and I are arguing. I'm sorry for that. I understand why. He spent a lot of money. Now he could be out money. It shouldn't have been approved until a letter was sent out at the start, and it shouldn't be approved by building a deck on it. That's just, if you're going to look at a deck as part of the structure of the house, then 3/4 of the older cottages in Lake George and Elsford Lake wouldn't meet approval for the county. Because again, everybody builds decks close to the water because they don't get permits. But I'm rambling now. I'm sorry. I apologize. You guys all have a letter that I wrote. You can read that. But I'm emphasizing the fact that it says existing structure when this bylaw was put in place.
Okay, could I just get a clarification from you, sir? Is it your position that the deck, the deck that is on there now, is not the deck that it's bigger and closer to your property,
Right.
than the deck that was on there
Right.
previously?
The deck that was on there would never have gotten torn off unless you guys told that person to take it off, build it bigger, and we'll let you build this.
And is it your suggestion that the deck that was on there would have caused the two properties that we're talking about to be more than 300 feet apart?
Yes.
I just wanted to get that clarification. And
So again, and that's your own law. If you're going to stick to laws and I can't build a house, then you should stick to your laws and not allow somebody else to.
all right,
And again, I'm sorry for this because again, Kevin's got a bunch of money tied up for a young family, as you see. That's not fair to him. This could have been all prevented by going back to the way that you guys used to do things. You used to send out a letter when somebody was applying for a change of use, yes, and this isn't. But this should be considered a change of use, period. You guys all know that it's a change of use. There can't be any doubt in your mind on that.
just arrived because I asked you a question. I'm now looking to the rest of council if there's anything that
I
arose
would hope
from...
that somebody would ask me something. I really would.
Is there anything that arose from the question that I asked that council wishes to follow up on? No, there's nothing else, sir. Thank you for your
Thank you
presentation.
for your time. Appreciate it.
Is there anyone else who wishes to present on this application? Yes, sir. He can come too if he wants.
My name's Kevin Erickson. Okay, you're coming up. Okay, buddy. Okay, anyway, you know, obviously I don't want to squabble with my nice neighbors. I mean, we were good before this. Obviously, he has a point. That's not obviously the point of this. He said that there was planted crop less than 5 years ago, but I mean, when you look at the pictures we looked at earlier, the middle, there's clearly trees all over the lot. They're more than 5 years old. I can't see how anyone was planting. When we bought the house, there was corn planted in the backfield, which is one big rectangle in the back. And there was corn planted back there, which, you know, that's not even part of the subdivided lot. So the farm stuff, to my knowledge, is totally out of the actual portion that we subdivided off. I don't believe anyone was actually farming there since it used to be an orchard a long time ago, I think 20 years ago or something. So anyway, to the next point, the existing dwellings, obviously my house was existing at the adoption of the bylaw, but he does have a point. The deck was not in existence where it was now. So I was told that I could build the deck out. to meet this bylaw, but it doesn't say anywhere that I can't, you can't make an addition on your house to meet this bylaw. I read it quite a bit. It doesn't say anywhere that you cannot make an addition. So I don't think that has much merit, but in any case, I figured that he would probably say that, so I did get a alternative site plan, a new one drawn up from a surveyor. And this shows that, in fact, it does, even without the deck to Murray's house, it shows clearly that it is still less than 300 feet from Murray's house to the existing foundation, which in my, like as a carpenter, I know that a foundation is part of a dwelling, obviously. So, and you can show in the pictures, if you go back, if you could, I sent a couple of pictures showing keep going to the pictures of my house, where it shows the deck. You see the foundation there underneath the deck? That extension, that part of the deck was extended, but the survey here shows to that foundation, which is a monolithic pour of my foundation. So a monolithic pour means, a single piece of concrete poured all at once. So that foundation is in fact part of my dwelling, and which was always there well before this, the date of this bylaw. So even though the deck, there is a good point with the deck, it does show if you guys would like to see these, I got 6 copies here. If anyone wants to see them, it's a proper survey done by AVS Surveys. It shows that it is within the 300 feet regardless of whether you measure to the deck or not. So if anyone wants to see that, welcome to hand them out if you would like to see.
Thank you, sir. If you leave them with the clerk over there, she'll see that we get them.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Before you leave, though, in the event that there are any questions of clarification
Okay, no
from
problem.
any of the councillors, Councillor Killam, I believe, has a question. Councillor Killam?
Thank you, Mayor. Not a direct question to the presenter. I'll just wait until that's over.
Thanks, Mayor Matart. Thank you for your presentation. In our documents, at some point, it's referenced that before you purchased the property, you did research on the land use bylaw and the things you were permitted to do. Can you just
Yeah.
explain that a tiny bit?
Well, before we bought the property, that was actually one of the reasons we bought the property. We phoned the municipality and figured all this out beforehand, whether or not we could, possibly do an infill lot there. And we were advised that, if we followed the proper procedures, we could in fact build there. And actually, that's one of the reasons why we purchased the whole property to begin with. So, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other questions of clarification? No other questions? Thank you for your presentation, sir. I wonder if I could see the survey plan. If council, I only pass 2 in each direction, if council could share them. If you don't mind, we'll just take a moment and look at the plan. We've had an opportunity to look at the new piece of correspondence that arrived late as well. So this plan is showing 297 feet from foundation to foundation. Thank you. Please come to the mic, sir. Yeah. Have you seen the plan, sir?
No, again, I've never.
Would you like to
I would love
see?
to. Never been sent out anything.
While he's checking that, Councillor Killam would,
Thank you, Mayor. Just some comments. Number one, I think that we're planning to have a public meeting on maybe ways of more opportunities for residential development in the county. That's, I understand that may be coming our way for public input. And I'm just wondering where, as you know, we have a housing crisis. We also have seniors that want to live in their homes. And maybe this is something that could be brought to that particular meeting for review and offer an opportunity for those like Murray to be able to stay on his property and possibly, build a house that would accommodate his needs. Yeah, it's a bit frustrating for everyone here. It's unfortunate it has got into a neighborhood dispute, but maybe there's a solution at the end of the day if we can look at a way of relaxing some of these I call very strict rules on building in the rural areas. And I just want to throw that out because I understand there will be a public meeting coming for input from the public as to ways we can maybe help out the housing issues out there. That's all I have to say at this point. Thank you.
thank you, Councillor. We appreciate your comments. We don't want to extend any false hopes at the present time, and what we're dealing with now is the application that's before us. And sir, you wanted to comment further.
No disrespect to Kevin, he is a good builder. He is a contractor. But I have also been in the building industry for 40 years, so I know a little something about it too. What he is talking about as part of his foundation is not part of his foundation. That's a retaining wall. Take a look at the pictures and you can see it. It juts out from the corner of his house. It's a retaining wall to keep the dirt from falling down in front of the door that they go out and out of in the basement. So that shouldn't be classified as part of the house. It's not. It's a retaining wall. Anything that's classified as part of the house would have to be inspected and up to code, would it not?
Oh, any structure that's built needs to be compliant with our bylaws,
Right.
yes.
So that retaining wall was never compliant with the way a house is supposed to be built. It would have to have a 4-foot frost wall into the basement or into the ground. That's a retaining wall. It's not part of the basement.
Thank you, sir.
So that puts it, again, back over 300 feet. Because you can see where the deck stops. It's right on that retaining wall. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, you can speak again.
The foundation, I have actually sent pictures of the other side showing that it wasn't, that foundation wall wasn't added later. It was all part of a monolithic pour, like I said before. So when they built the house, that portion of the foundation was all poured at the same time as the foundation of the house. That wall there goes directly into my basement. My basement is underground, right? Do you have those pictures? There's a couple more that I sent. It is a close-up. You can actually see that it wasn't an addition of the concrete, you know what I mean? It shows that it was, the concrete goes right through as, so you could tell that it wasn't added later, essentially is what I'm saying, that it was. And if you zoom in on that picture, actually you can see that there's half-inch, the bolts you put in your foundation to hold your bottom plate down, they're still existing in this wall here because it looks like they were planning on building a garage over top of that after the fact, and I guess never got around to it or ran out of money. See there, if you zoom, can you zoom in on that or no?
It's out of my hands.
Yeah. So you can tell that this whole thing is all one pour. It's all one chunk of concrete. And you can, that post there is actually sitting on one of the half-inch bolts. And if you go back in the pictures to the one we were just looking at as well, and zoom in on that if you could. Could you zoom in on the one on the right, please? If you could, I don't know if you can. If you look at the far right post, there's 3 posts there. The one on the right side, you can see a little bolt sticking up just to the left of the post. That there is the existing bolt that I was talking about. They use those to hold the bottom plate of your house down so that you can build on top of it. So there was 3 of them in there. Just the reason I'm pointing that out is, you know, if it was just a retaining wall, you wouldn't be putting, you know, half-inch bolts to hold a bottom plate down into the concrete when you build it. And it's just, I'm just pointing out that, I mean, I never built that wall. That was part of the original foundation, which your foundation is obviously part of your dwelling. It's the most important part of your dwelling, you know, along with your roof. So that's basically all I have to say, just pointing out and that, you know, I didn't build that. And it does, if that concrete stopped at the ground there, that would fall right over. That goes down. Yeah. Anyway.
All right, sir.
Just
Thank you.
pointing that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? No other speakers? Ms. Armstrong, did you want to wrap up, or you're okay with what you've presented?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My presentation was concluded, so unless there's any other questions from council, it would just be to go to the recommendation.
All right, would you like to put the recommendations back on the screen, please? So, council, our options are to approve the appeal or one of the appeals, or to uphold the decision of the development officer with respect to what's within her scope of decision making. Would someone like to move one of those 2 motions in order to get the matter on the table? Councillor Armstrong, you have a question?
I'm sorry to go backwards here, but I was just wondering if I might be able to ask the planning staff a question.
Of course.
If this did not move forward, would Ms. Banks and Mr. Erickson have the capacity to sell this particular piece of land and have someone else build on it? Would it meet the definition of a infill lot and be able to build on it?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Armstrong, if they sold the lot that was created, my interpretation would that it would still be a building lot, but the new property owner would then have to go through site plan approval. So I suspect we will be back in the same spot.
Yeah, I'm just saying that if we ruled against somebody who decided not to appeal and just walk away from this particular circumstance and decide to sell that lot, someone else could come along and do exactly the same thing.
They would also, yes, need
Yep.
to go through site plan
Through the-
approval and
yep.
then get the building permit, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor Armstrong has moved the motion, seconded by the motion on the screen, Councillor? Yes. Seconded by Councillor Hurdle. Councillor Hurdle, is that correct? Yes. Discussion on the motion. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Member Tart. This has been obviously a difficult situation to watch unfold. Having heard from the neighbors and the applicants, nobody enjoys conflict in their backyard or in their neighborhood, and oftentimes it is our rules that create conflict, and sometimes those rules are arbitrary. And one thing I keep thinking about during this process is the initial land use bylaw that we forwarded to the province for approval contained a 500-foot infill lot provision, which of course this would have met no problem. Right? No. Yes, I'm not saying it backwards. Okay. So that was council's initial recommendation, and then of course when it came back, it was sort of re-amended back to 300 feet, which did again like limit the amount of infills. I think Mayor Matar said it before. There's 300. So this is one that is not cut and dried, but in my mind, the intention behind the infill lot provision is to allow small development in already developed areas, which this is, being on the edge of the town of Berwick and already having some houses quite close by. So while it's been a difficult, I think, decision, I will be supporting the motion on the screen in front of us. And I am satisfied that the development officer interpreted the bylaw correctly, although I do think the bylaw lacks sufficient clarity in this circumstance around existing dwelling and deck. So I think because I think the point was made, it doesn't prohibit the addition to meet the criteria. And for me, that satisfies it. And I will be supporting the motion based on that evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Killam.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be supporting this recommendation also, but for the reasons that I alluded to earlier, that we do have a housing crisis out in our county. And I hope that maybe in the future, as we move forward, that we can make adjustments in our plan that would satisfy some of the issues surrounding seniors wanting to stay in their home, and possibly can accommodate some of the issues that Mr. Jones has brought forward today. So I'm supporting on that basis that we can look forward to maybe tweaking it a little more to allow those kind of things to happen. So
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hurtle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In looking at our bylaws and some of the vagueness of the potential to interpret this, I feel like because of that, there is no stipulation outlining the deck or maybe the piece of for retaining wall or whatever you'd like to call it. I don't feel it stipulates closely enough should that be included in the 300 feet. So due to that, I feel this is within the scope of what's allowed, and so I will be voting to uphold this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hurtle. Any other debate? Councillor Armstrong, once again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This isn't necessarily debate, it's more of a comment. And notwithstanding what Councillor Killam said, I think a lot of the discussion tonight concerning bylaws and such harkens back to the epic session that we had at the beginning of July 26th with the canning, and the fact that perhaps we need to look a little bit more closely about our public engagement and the steps that we take in bringing people into the fold as far as information goes. So I will support this, but I do take Mr. Jones's comments into consideration in saying that perhaps we need to have a close look at how we are engaging the public and how quickly we do it when things like this come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor, once again.
Thank you, Mayor Matart. Just to piggyback on what Councillor Armstrong was saying, I also think there's merit in looking at when you build on A1 and as a non-farmer, does that change the use of the property? I think there's real merit in that point, that it's a small lot, it might be zoned A1 based on its soil composition, based on the land use soil mapping. But if it's a small lot and it is, just because it's A1, if it's a permitted lot, then technically the use is different. I mean, unless it's a farm dwelling, I guess, which may not be an infill. But I think there's also merit in that conversation, that it does become residential. And I don't know how we make that easier to understand, or I don't know how we bring clarity to that situation, but I think it's worth discussing a little bit. And I know, like you said, that there's so few lots like this in the county that would be eligible, but I think it is something to consider when these come to our table or to the development officer's desk, what that looks like. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anybody else who wishes to speak on the matter? Any other councillor? No? I can say that absent the evidence of the fact that it is foundation to foundation 300 feet, I might have had reservations about this, notwithstanding the fact that technically speaking the developer would tell me and you that there are only 2 items of appeal associated with the matter from the staff interpretation of the bylaw. I think it's important to know that what the distance is from foundation to foundation. So I appreciate that information, and because of that information, I'll save you a very long dissertation on what I might otherwise have felt. And I will be supporting the application. But I subscribe to the comments of all council, and they point out that obviously the municipality needs to reach out and improve its communications. When we propose developments that are multi-unit high-rise developments, we're getting pushback these days, and when we propose single-family unit or duplex unit developments, we're getting pushback. So it's difficult to know in which direction the municipality should be moving. So communication is always the answer. So I thank you all for your presentations. Sir, from your point of view, you've established very well that our communications are not what they should be, and we take that very much to heart. And sir, from the applicant's point of view, I appreciate that you've done your very best to stay within the rules of the municipality as they exist. So we appreciate both points of view, but all things considered, it appears, until we take the vote at any rate, that the resolution is being discussed in a positive tone. And there being no further discussion, then I'm calling for the vote on the motion. Yea or nay? Please vote now. The motion is unanimously passed. Thank you. The decision of the development officer is upheld. Moving on to item B under item 6, the planning application fee refund application. Ms. Mosier is going to present on that. Ms. Mosier, when you're ready.
Good evening. We are here to field a request for a refund of planning application fees submitted by Amy Atwell, whose residence is at 331 Tupper Road in North Kentville. I'm sorry, can you just hold on 1 second? I think I have an old version here.
while we're waiting for Ms. Mosher to check her slides, councilors, it's my preliminary thoughts that, and I'm asking you for yours, that we propose to adjourn at 9 p.m., notwithstanding where we are in the agenda. If we need to push the items forward, then we will. But we'll take a pause at about 8:30 or so to determine what's most important on the agenda in the event that we have to push something or deal with something. If anybody else has any contrary opinions, I'd like to hear them. No? Okay. You ready, Ms. Mosher?
Yes, thank you. We received the request for refund on July 7th, 2022 in the form of a letter that's included as an appendix to the report in your agenda package. Just by way of reminder, we processed this application and presented it to Planning Advisory Committee on April 12th of 2022 with a positive recommendation to Council, who ultimately approved the development agreement on June 7th, 2022. This application dealt with the expansion of a non-conforming use. It's important to note that our land use bylaw enables modest expansions to non-conforming residential uses, up to 25% of the existing main building footprint, and accessory buildings up to 600 square feet total on the property. This is permission that was newly introduced in our new land use bylaw, which Council adopted in 2019. Our previous land use bylaw had no options for expansion for non-conforming dwellings. So this was a matter that staff discussed at length and in great detail, that non-conforming residential uses should be able to expand modestly. But there are lots of different reasons and different ways that uses become non-conforming. The status results ultimately from you, from Council, adopting regulations that render uses to no longer be permitted. At that point, they become non-conforming uses. They are legally able to continue in perpetuity, but generally are not able to expand until we introduced additional permissions. Some of the reasons or ways in which non-conforming uses become non-conforming is that the character of an area could change over time, and as such, the zoning is changed to reflect the current character, but there may be some holdouts. So you may find, we find old automotive garages in our rural areas that used to be operated but are no longer operated. If the use is discontinued and is no longer a listed permitted use in the zone, it therefore becomes non-conforming. Another way is that, and ways that uses have become non-conforming is through the adoption of new planning documents. So there's a shift in the way Council wishes to do planning and development in a municipality. So older developments that occurred under previous regulations may no longer be able to be built that way today. There are situations, however, where it may be desirable on the behalf of a landowner or on the part of Council or other matters that we really can't predict, that mean that an expansion beyond that 25% may be desired. And this would be true of all non-conforming uses. So as a result, staff and Council in our municipal planning strategy adopted a policy that enables Council to consider a development agreement for residential and non-residential non-conforming uses to be expanded beyond what might be permitted as of right. In the case of residential uses, that's the 25%. In the case of non-residential uses, that's 0% as of right expansionability. Staff took this approach because typically there are reasons why uses are not permitted any longer, why they've become non-conforming, and we discussed that. But there may be situations where it's still appropriate for expansion to occur. What a development agreement does is it enables Council to look at each case individually on its merits and within the context in which it's actually located. So in this case, it was a dwelling that's located on a private right-of-way. It's not a private road or a public road, it's a private right-of-way. And we don't permit development as of right on properties that don't have public road frontage. The applicant in this case did have the ability to expand up to 25% of the building footprint. It was determined by them that this was not adequate for their plans, and as such, they applied for a development agreement. Staff processed the development agreement, you folks turned your minds to it, and it achieved what it was meant to achieve. I'm sorry, my slides are all out of order. I don't know what happened here. Our fee policy, I'm going to go off script here because my script is failing me. Our fees policy indicates that council is able to refund any or all of an application fee, provided it gives a reason for it. In terms of our planning fees, our planning fee consists of two fees, actually. One is a processing fee of $700 for development agreements. That covers, in theory, staff time and registration. And there's an ad fee, an advertising fee. This is applied for all of our planning applications, and it constitutes $400 of our $1,100 application fee. This application had a total of 3 ads in the newspaper, 2 ads for the public hearing, and 1 for the notice of passing at a cost of $275 each. Traditionally, council has authorized refunds of planning application fees only in the case where an application benefits more than just the applicant. Typically, this is a land use bylaw text amendment where, for example, our most recent land use bylaw text amendment added uses to the list of permitted uses within a given zone. As a result, not only the applicant, but every person who owns a piece of land in that zone indirectly or directly benefits from that amendment. As a result, council has issued refunds for planning application fees. In this case, and in the case of all development agreements, the application only benefits the landowner and potential future landowners of that same land. As a result, since the benefit is only instilled on the applicant, staff are recommending that council refuse the refund of $1,100 requested by Amy Atwell in accordance with section 14.11.7.1 of policy FIN-05-003 fees policy.
Thank you, Ms. Mosier, for your presentation. There may be questions of clarification. It seemed quite clear, but if there are questions of clarification from councilors, please step up now. Councillor Killam.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking at this application as a bit of a unique situation. The history goes back many, many years in Meadowview. They've been dealing with the dump site for 80 years. These folks that are involved with this application, Amy.
Excuse me, Councillor, I appreciate what you're saying, and you'll have an opportunity to say it, but we're looking for questions of clarification
I'm sorry.
at the moment.
I'll wait. Thank you.
Okay, I'll call upon you again. Are there any questions of clarification from the presenter? Seeing none, then I'd like a motion on the table before we enter into debate and discussion. Moved by Councillor Granger, seconded by Councillor Meisner. Now discussion on the motion. Councillor Killam, you go first.
Yes, sorry for jumping on this one. I have history with the community of Meadowview regarding the issues that went on in there over the years. The county, after a lot of battles, decided to move the dump site. First of all, moving the road, which all the garbage in Kings County was going through their community, and they have there has been restitution to the community. However, these folks that have lived there all their lives, it's a private road. times are tough, and Mrs. Atwell is living in a house that her family has lived in over the years. And I'm just thinking that looking at the whole thing as a bit of a unique situation, I would definitely recommend that those fees be returned to her. I think I brought this up sort of indirectly when the canning application came forward. And when you compare the same fee that Mrs. Atwell has to pay is the same fee that basically the proponents of the canning operation had to pay, or the development. And it's something doesn't work for me on that one as to the fairness of it. And I know it has, it's cost the county a bit of money, but looking at the whole history there, I certainly hope that council will help Mrs. Atwell in returning that refund. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anyone else wish to speak on the motion? First of all, Deputy Mayor Lutz.
Thank you so much, Mayor Matart. Through you, just a question, if it's okay to back up a tiny bit. And apologies if it came up earlier and I didn't hear it the way I'm reading it, but the applicant indicates a prior approval which may have been a misunderstanding as the municipality did not issue building permits. Can you just walk me? I'm trying to determine if there was sort of willful ignorance, or if the existence of a development agreement was overlooked. If you could, do you know where I'm speaking about? Like, so what was the misunderstanding about the building permit?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor.
Yes, if I may, though, if just to make it clear, normally we don't interrupt debate on a motion to go to the presenter for further clarification. But in this case, I want to make it clear. In this case, not a problem. We're going there, but it's a permission thing, and we're trying not to make a habit of it.
I won't
Thanks.
do it again. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor. So if you take a look at Appendix A, Ms. Atwell's letter says, last year my contractor received the proper paperwork to begin and then was contacted to hold off to go through the seemingly unnecessary process. So the only proper paperwork that we issue to proceed with development are permits. And permits were not issued on this application.
Thank you.
So I've opened the door on asking further questions of clarification. I'll ask one. Thank you for opening the door. There was an extent to which the applicant could have expanded the use of her property as of right, was there not?
That's correct.
And to what extent could she have extended her property as of right?
25% of the building footprint.
And she chose instead to increase it by what percentage?
I'm afraid I don't have that
But
number.
more than 25%?
More than 25%.
Okay. Thank you. And Councillor Granger had a follow-up.
Thank you. Since we've kicked the door open, I'm in. I was just wondering if it states anywhere that fees are non-refundable.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Granger, we do advise applicants when they do apply that they are non-refundable, but we have this one clause in our fees policy, which is very useful during text amendments. You know, one person takes it upon themselves to apply for a text amendment, and we process the application, we determine whether or not it's appropriate, and they benefit along with everyone else that can meet those requirements. So in that case, it does make sense that that benefit is spread out, no different than the benefit being spread out over many people, that the fee be spread out over many people. But in this case, it is one property owner that is benefiting. Nobody else benefits from this but them. And it's as a result of their desire to exceed the 25% expansion as of right.
Okay. So I'm not sure if that answers my question outright or not. Is it written anywhere where we say it's non-refundable?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I can certainly look into that and report back if council wished to have the answer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Granger. Thank you, Ms. Mosier. Whether or not it states elsewhere that it's non-refundable, Councillor, there is a provision that says we can, in this circumstance, refund, should we choose to do so, should the circumstances warrant it, and should, from staff's point of view, where it's a text amendment and many people get the benefit, then it would be unfair in that circumstance to charge just one person for that benefit when it spreads across a large section of our community. And this is a situation where it's only one person benefiting, so that was the distinction that was being made. Ms. Javerick wishes to enter into the conversation. Ms. Javerick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following up on Councillor Granger's inquiry, the same fees policy that we're quoting here as giving us the ability, or council the ability to consider a refund, the same policy does indicate that the $700 is non-refundable. And I guess it does actually further go on to say that the $400 advertising fee refunded if the application is withdrawn or refused. So it does address it within that same policy that gives us this ability to consider.
Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Javerick. In this case, as I understood the presentation, the advertising fees were in excess of, or $700 or more. So it was kind of turned on its head. So the out-of-pocket was greater than the application fee. Yep. All right. Any further discussion? If not, I've heard at least one councillor express points of view that whereby they will not be voting in favor. And that councillor's light's now on. Councillor Killam.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm just reiterating my stance on this, on just the human part of this and the history of Meadowview, and the fact that is a private road. It's kind of a unique situation, and these folks, like everyone else, are struggling financially and trying to bring their family up in their neighborhood. And I just ask council to consider that part, not maybe the bureaucratic part. And I guess that's what I'm referring to. And I'll leave it with council to make their decision, but I'll be voting against not allowing them to have a refund. Thank you.
Thank you. The councillor will be voting against the motion. Well, I haven't spoken on the issue. If it were a matter, if it were not for the fact that the individual consciously chose to make the extension in excess of the 25% as of right extension, then I might have a different point of view, but I'll be voting in favor of the motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor or otherwise of the motion as it appears on the screen, please vote now. The motion's passed with 2 negative votes. Thank you. Item 7, Planning Advisory Committee recommendations. Councillor Armstrong, you have those ready for us?
But of course.
No, eh?
I've had
We'll
an hour
deal
and
with
15
them.
minutes
Would
to
you
get
like
there.
me to deal with them, or do you want to deal with them?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Our first item is that Municipal Council appoint Kimberly Foote, member of the Centerville District Community Development Association, to the Centerville Area Advisory Committee for a 1-year term, and that Michael Foote be appointed citizen member for a 2-year term. I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Peter Allen. All those in favor or otherwise, please vote now. My apologies, Councillor Allen. It's been a long month. That motion's unanimously passed. Thank you. Item B. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. That Municipal Council give initial consideration to and hold a public hearing regarding entering into a development agreement for the property located at 9347 Commercial Street, PID 55210-538, New Minas, to legalize one residential unit and permit the development of an additional residential unit into an accessory building as described in Appendix C of the report dated August 9th, 2022. I so move.
Thank you. And a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Granger. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor or otherwise, please vote now. That's unanimously passed. Councillor?
That Municipal Council give initial consideration to and hold a public hearing regarding entering into a development agreement to permit a farm dwelling accessory to a farm business in the agricultural A1 zone on the property located at 88 Coleman Road, PID 553368302 Waterville, which is substantively the same for minor differences in form as the draft set out in Appendix D of the report dated August 9, 2022. I so move.
Thank you. Seconder to the motion, Councillor Killam. Discussion on the motion. Seeing no discussion, all those, oops, I'm sorry, there is discussion. Councillor Killam, you go ahead.
Just a comment, Mayor. This has been quite a long journey for Mr. Coleman. He's here with us tonight, and it's good news for him, and he can move on with his life. And I just hope that council will support this motion. Thank you.
Thanks,
I
thanks, Mayor
didn't turn
Richard.
my own mic on. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thanks, Mayor Richard. I would just echo Councillor Killam's thoughts and say that Mr. Baker has a lot of good friends, all of whom will be very relieved, I think, and who've been following along closely. There's many folks in the community who have been looking forward to this. The most of all, I'm sure, Mr. Baker. So I'm happy to support this this evening, and he's got great community support, and that is a priceless thing. So I'll be voting in favor. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I also will be voting in favor based upon the application as presented, and I'm sure Councillor Killam, when he mentioned Coleman, was thinking about Coleman Road, not...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, I was. Sorry, Mr. Baker. I know your name and I know you. It was a slip.
Any further discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor or otherwise of the motion, please vote now. That's unanimously passed. Congratulations, Mr. Baker.
If I can just jump in and point out that this is only first reading, so
Yes.
we will be having a public meeting and another vote in October, but I think we're good to go. Number 3, the municipal,
D.
The Municipal Council approved the non-substantive amendment to the development agreement dated April 3rd, 2007 between MIR1 Developments, Inc. and the municipality of the County of Kings concerning the property identified as Lot C8 Fairbanks Avenue
PID 55505-960 Greenwich, as described in Appendix A of the report dated August 9, 2022. I so move.
Thank you. Seconder? Deputy Mayor. Just before we ask for debate, I congratulate all the councillors that managed to wade through all that entire agreement and supplements to that agreement. It was very long. So thank you all for that. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Any debate? Seeing none, all those in favor or otherwise of the motion, please vote now. The motion is unanimously passed. Thank you. Item E.
Just a reminder that Planning Advisory Committee will be hosting a public participation meeting on the draft Numina secondary planning strategy here in Council Chambers on September 13th at 6 p.m. And we hope anyone and everyone will come out to let their viewpoint be heard. Thank you. And the last item is the public hearing. Next public hearing will be October 4th, 6 p.m. in these chambers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And that public participation meeting to which you referred, of course, that's important to all people in New Minas. It's open to anyone in the county, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And those are all the items for Councillor Armstrong. We're moving now to administration. Item A, amendments to bylaw 99, which is the bylaw regarding tax exemptions for nonprofit organizations. And the issue is with respect to second reading. And the recommended motion is that Municipal Council give second reading to amend bylaw 99, tax exemption for nonprofit organizations, as attached to the September 6, 2022 Council agenda. Now, of course, we're all aware, we've reviewed the amendment, and it has to do with rather unsubstantive matters. Do I have a mover of the motion? Anybody wish to? Councillor Allen, thank you. So, I remember your name now. Councillor Harding, seconds. And I'm told that there were 4 hands that I missed to my right. I apologize for that. Peripheral vision's going, folks. It's been moved and seconded. Any debate on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor or otherwise, please vote now. That motion is unanimously passed, the Deputy Mayor being out of her seat and Councillor Windsor being absent. Thank you for that. We're going to take a pause. I'm declaring a recess for 15 minutes. A couple of councillors have indicated that it's an appropriate time. We've been here an hour and a half. And there's no public amongst us anymore, so now's an appropriate time to break. kind of stifled the conversation, didn't it? So welcome back, folks. We just took a 15-minute break. We're now on item 8B. Proclamation request, Maritime Kids Health Day, and the municipal clerk is going to speak to that item. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. Very quick item. We received a request from National Public Relations, and that was on behalf of the IWK Foundation, the Ronald McDonald House Charities, Atlantic, Brigadoon Village, and Make-A-Wish, and that was to proclaim September the 14th, 2022, Maritime Kids Health Day. It's the first time that we've received this request, and it meets the criteria of the proclamation's policy, and the recommendation is therefore that Municipal Council proclaim September 14th, 2022, Maritime Kids Health Day in the municipality of the County of Kings.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do I have a mover of the motion? Councillor Armstrong. And 2 hands from Councillor Meisner seconding the motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor or otherwise, please vote now. And I'll ask the Deputy Mayor, who's now returning, whether she's voting in favor of the declaration of the Kids' Day. Yes, I know it's the Kids' Day. Maritime Kids Health Day? And you do vote in favor of it. Thank you. So that makes the vote unanimous. I wanted the record to show that. Thank you. Moving on then to I'm losing track of I've left out some check marks here. Moving on to item 8C, planning-related consulting. And Mr. Frost is going to present to us on that particular item. Mr. Frost, your light is on when you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Council. So I have 3 items to present to you this evening, the first one being planning-related consulting. So, if this works, yep. So first of all, the discussion on this particular item. So as we've discussed on a few different occasions, that our current growth in municipality has been moving very well, which is a good thing. But of course, when development moves at a certain pace, of course, we need to make sure that we can keep up with that in a whole bunch of different ways. So first of all, on the planning side, there has been a couple of discussions, one on incentives and bonusing fairly recently with PAC and Council. And again, there's been discussion that there needs to be some further look at that particular item. Affordable housing, which was mentioned earlier this evening, certainly continues to be a concern within the municipality and across Nova Scotia. And recently there's been changes to the MGA that allows inclusionary zoning, and again, that's something that we feel should be looked at a bit closer, and that both items could be reviewed externally and brought back to Council. So incentives and bonusing, if we were to go to an outside consultant, there's 2 items again that we would look at in the incentives and bonusing process, would be to have a development of a discussion paper, which would look at best practices in other jurisdictions in Nova Scotia, formulate some draft policy consideration for Kings, and consult with staff. And then, of course, dependent on the resolutions of PAC and Council, the consultant would help prepare draft amendments for PAC and administer the public participation process. On the inclusionary zoning process, very similar proposal would be brought forth. So again, doing some background report, including jurisdictional scans, propose options for consideration, consult with staff, and then of course, depending on the move forward from Council, further resolutions of PAC and Council and draft amendments. This proposed consultant, we would ask that we receive a funding of $50,000, which would be allocated from this project out of the COVID Reserve Fund. And just a note that there's currently $514,000 remaining in the COVID reserve. And with that, I would provide the recommendation that Municipal Council direct the CAO to release a request for proposal and hire a consultant to propose amendments to planning documents as per the request for decision presented to Council September 6th.
Thank you, Deputy CAO. Do we have questions of clarification of the presenter? Councillor Granger, you had, I noticed your light flickered on before Mr. Frost began to speak. Did you have a matter that you wanted to?
I did. I was wondering if we did 8A. Or
8A?
did we just start right at 8B?
Approval of.
Because I feel like I missed something.
The amendment to bylaw 99 we did not do, did we?
We did.
Did we? Because I had it checked off. Yes, it's done? Okay.
Wow.
Well, see, you didn't think we had it done, and you had me
for a
almost
while.
convinced that we didn't have it done, so. But thank you for bringing that up. Any questions of clarification of the presenter on this particular recommendation? It all seems pretty straightforward. The issue is whether you wish to allocate a sum of $50,000, and it will not exceed that without anybody coming back for another motion. All those in favor or otherwise of the motion, please vote now. I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, did you have a?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We don't have a mover and seconder yet for the motion.
Yeah, moved by Councillor Hurdle, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Didn't you see that? This is, as the councillor to my right said, this is our first day of school. So again, my apologies. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor or otherwise, please vote now. It's times like this that make me so happy we decided to telecast. And there you see the mayor neglected to vote on the motion, but he does vote in favor, and the motion is unanimously passed. Thank you, Mr. Frost. And Mr. Frost is remaining at the podium, and he's dealing with item 8D, permitting and inspection processes contract. Mr. Frost.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the next item relating to, again, consulting to review permitting and inspection process. So similar to the last item, again, development, this is another response to good development within the municipality, and that we need to ensure that our processes, including permitting and inspections, are able to respond in a timely fashion, and again, see what we can do to ensure that that process is seamless. So again, we would propose that to hire a consultant that would follow a similar process to the last item. So again, document current processes to look at how we do things now, complete jurisdictional scans, and develop draft recommendations, including things like service standards, capacity requirements, and staffing, content and release of clear applicant responsibilities, and organizational design, and potentially software requirements if there is improvements upon what we already have. And then, of course, staff consultation, and then draft and final report submissions would occur. For this particular item, we would look for funds of not to exceed $75,000, again, to come from the COVID Reserve Fund, GL 614460383. And with that, I would ask for the recommendation that Municipal Council direct the CAO to release a request for proposal and hire a consultant to perform a review of our permitting and inspections processes.
Thank you. Any questions of clarification of the presenter? No? Is someone prepared to move the motion? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Hurdle. Discussion on the motion. Any debate? Any discussion? I see none. I'll just briefly comment that I'm very pleased that we might decide to do this. And in particular, in order to come up with a better response to our citizenry who make applications and any communication with the municipality, if we can do a jurisdictional scan and come up with best practices from each jurisdiction that we scan and consolidate them into a working arrangement within the municipality of Kings to better serve our citizens, I would not be, you'd have a hard time keeping me in my seat from floating. So thank you for this suggestion. All those in favor or otherwise of the motion that Municipal Council direct the CAO to release a request for proposal and hire a consultant to perform a review of our permitting and inspection processes as described, please vote now. That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Frost, and stay where you are for item E, update on salary adjustments. Mr. Frost, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, one last brief item. So we had in-camera discussions back in July 26th regarding salary adjustments, and the CAO had committed to returning to provide you with the information on that. So this is that presentation. So again, during our discussions on July 26th, the CAO received direction from Council regarding the proposed amendments to wages for unionized staff and committed to returning with that information. So the CAO and myself met with the union representative following that meeting with Council and agreed to a memorandum of agreement, which is attached to your package. And in that memorandum of agreement, basically, again, as previously discussed, the 3.5% increase effective June 1st, which would replace the scheduled 1.5% increase, which was in the collective agreement, and that we also committed to a salary review that will occur this fall, which may bring forth future discussion. And with that, would just provide that the Municipal Council received this briefing regarding adjustments to wages of unionized staff dated September 6th as information.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Questions for clarification of any? Seeing none, all those in favor or otherwise of the motion as recommended, please vote now. I'm sorry. Sorry to jump on you like that, but Councillor Harding moves and Councillor Allen seconds the motion, and now those in favor or otherwise, please vote now. Get the deputy mayor to chair the next meeting. I already am. That's unanimous. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Frost, for your presentations. We're moving on to item 9, Engineering and Public Works, Lands and Park Services, and we once discussed with Mr. Quinn the Aylesford Lake Beach tender award, and came back rather large, and we asked that it go back and be reconsidered, and after reconsideration, Mr. Quinn is back to present. Mr. Quinn, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Council. So this is regarding some additional information regarding the recent tender on the Aylesford Lake Beach washroom facility. So again, sort of the intent is to for Council to award the construction contract to build that the permanent washroom facility and approve supplemental funding and contingency fund related to that. So we've prepared some background information based on some of the topics that were raised during the July 26th Council session, and also one further update that we were able to provide to Council tonight and in the public, that we can confirm that the ACOA funding has been awarded for this project, so to receive up to $250,000 towards the project, and part of that application was based on the accessibility and net zero ready design features that were part of the overall design package. So just a quick overview in terms of the scope of the work. So it is about a 1,200 square foot building. It's going to be built to Rick Hansen standard, consistent with the accessibility policy. That includes 4 washrooms. One of them has an adult change room. There's 2 changing rooms there, and then also provisions for connection to existing water and septic systems, and it is ready to receive solar panels. So all the structural and electrical components will be there. Just be a matter of bringing the panels up at point. Also, the work does include accessibility upgrades to the parking lot area and abutting walkways to connect into the park beach area itself. So, and with some research that we've found one comparable project. It's a project done by HRM at Fort Needham Park. So they've built a similar facility. It's a 700 square foot washroom facility. Their bid price at the time, and this facility just opened earlier this year, but it was at $600,000 or roughly $860 per square foot. By comparison with this bid price, before the solar panels is about $775 per square foot. If we add in solar panels after, it runs to equals to about $810 per square foot with solar panels. So there's two fairly comparable projects in terms of the scope and what they're attempting to achieve in terms of net zero and accessibility. And there's some discussion on market conditions. I think basically looking at the initial scans that it's not looking positive for market conditions to improve anytime soon in terms of construction. To the point that we had a recent submission to Utility Review Board, and they asked us about what our contingency plans for COVID and supply chain disruptions into 2024. And that also with our operations team, it's like they're advising that parts and equipment lead times are at least 4 months when they actually commit to a lead time, and that number is increasing in some areas as well to almost 6 months. So. And anecdotally, we are hearing some of the contractors and trades are already booking into 2025, and we're just continuing to see ongoing labor competition from HRM and larger construction firms. We know there's pressures on local firms, and certainly some concerns with the ability of local firms to be able to bid on some of these projects going forward. So with that, we did receive 3 tenders with that. Roscoe Construction is the low bid at just under $893,000 before HST. So with that, it would come out with the Parks Facility Upgrades GL, which currently has a budget of $638,000 a bit, with the ACOA funding another $250,000. So the council would need to approve a remaining $112,425 for the remaining balance and contingencies outside of the normal budget process. And since this project is slated to be completed in next fiscal year, the recommendation is to do it as a carryover project, and staff is recommending funding that remaining $112,000 as part of next fiscal year's capital budget. And there is I guess the recommendation is that Municipal Council 1 pre-approve supplemental funding for the project in the amount of $112,425 as outlined in the July 26, 2022 request for decision. Also to award contract 22-05 Aylesford Lake Beach Washroom to Roscoe Construction for a total price of $930,838.97, including non-rebated HST. And to approve a contingency funding amount including non-recoverable HST of $69,815, or roughly 7.5% of the contract value for tender for potential change orders to the contract pursuant to Section 17.3C of the procurement policy.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Questions of clarification? We can debate the issue, of course, after we get a motion. Questions of clarification, Councillor Armstrong?
Yes, thank you. Great news about the $250,000. And it certainly changes the water on the beans from the last discussion that we had about
Yes,
this.
I imagine.
Because I think you needed a hard hat after that.
Yeah.
But the only question that I really have is, why did we go with a stick build instead of like concrete block walls? It would seem to me that, and maybe it's more expensive, and that would be a good answer. But I'm just thinking that, you could go in with just hose it down. It just a question.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, to Councilor, I'm sorry. I think there's a number of discussions in the design phase on trying to mitigate costs and also just recognizing basically the relatively remote location of the facility. So I think there's some back and forth on affordability, whether or not some of this could have been prefabbed off-site and that. But I think after the consultant advised, after they had some discussions within the construction industry, I think they settled on this one was sort of that best balance of trying to meet the accessibility standards, but also trying to contain costs.
Right, okay. I think nowadays it doesn't much matter whether you do stick build or concrete block.
Right.
Everything's way out of whack. So I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kittle.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm still in kind of awe of the cost of this construction, whether we pay what amount and whoever pays is, what's the old saying, there's one taxpayer. But anyway, I'm not going to go there. But my question would be, is this located in a wooded area close? Like, what happens if there's a wildfire out there and the place burns down? Is there insurance? Who's going to redo it?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Killam, I would suspect we'll try to insure what we can, but force majeure may prevail in those discussions with the insurance company. In terms of its relative location, it is in more of a cleared area, so it's not right up against the forest, but as we've seen with some of the weather conditions and that, there's not a particular guarantee that it won't happen, but it certainly will.
Project, don't get me wrong here, but I just have a little difficulty with the costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I understand there's quite a bit of water nearby. Is that?
It's pretty close, yes.
Yes. Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, this is a failing in my own regard in understanding accessibility standards, but the Rick Hansen Foundation, why is that the chosen standard here for this design? And are there other accessibility standards that could have been chosen, or how did we arrive on that? I'm just curious. And
Well, sure. Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Hurdle. I would say a lot of the accessibility standards that the province is adopting are in some way, if not a direct lift off of Rick Hansen, or are a derivative of Rick Hansen, and it's generally considered, sort of the gold standard there. In theory, we could have gone with building code, but whether or not that would have necessarily been satisfactory, and also building code looks at somewhat of the physical space, but doesn't necessarily capture all the aspects of accessibility. Like, I could say one example, like the signage that would be required if there's for rooms, Rick Hansen speaks to particular font size and how layout, which building code would not necessarily cover. So there are other standards, but I would say Rick Hansen is generally the accepted one that everybody's at least trying to strive for, at least as a compliant. If not, we're not necessarily maybe their highest level of that, but we're at least trying to get into in compliance with their general requirements there.
thank you, that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions of clarification of the presenter? Seeing none, then you've heard the presenter read the recommendation, the recommended motion. Is someone prepared to move it? The Deputy Mayor moves it, and Councillor Meisner seconds the motion that Municipal Council 1 pre-approve supplemental funding for the project in the amount of $112,425 for fiscal year 2023-24 as outlined in the July 26, 2022 request for decision, Secondly, award contract 22-05, Aylesford Lake Beach Washroom to Roscoe Construction Limited for the total price of $930,838.97, including non-rebated HST. And 3, approve a contingency fund in the amount, including non-recoverable HST, of $69,815, which is 7.5% of the value of the contract number 2205, for potential change orders to contract 22-05, Aylesford Lake Beach Washroom, pursuant to Section 17.3C of Policy FIN 05006, procurement. Discussion on the motion. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Matart. I will be supporting the motion. I'm very pleased to see the additional funding come from ACOA to supplement the total amount. And I just wanted to note that there's a few reasons why I believe that this is a great investment for the county. We don't own a ton of recreational facilities. This is our shining star, and I was there over the weekend, on the long weekend, and I did want to retract any previous statements I may have made about the portable washrooms, because I think I might have insinuated in the past that they weren't maintained, and I wanted to just note that while not ideal, they're perfectly maintained. They may not be accessible or great for children or have change tables, but the entire beach was impeccable. It was beautiful, including the porta potties, and that's saying something. So I just wanted to say in the preamble to this, what an amazing job our staff up there are doing. It's just bar none. Similarly, over the previous weekend, we had been at a park in Halifax, and the washroom experience was traumatizing because it was not maintained, and it was quite frankly horrible to try and navigate with 3 kids under 7. So I think this will be wonderful. I think we're already doing a great job. This is going to make it even better. And then to add on to that, we had an extremely successful event, Culture Day, held at the beach. We also hold Canada Day celebrations up there every year. This is going to extend our season. It's going to make it more accessible, make it more inclusive for events to happen at the beach. Hopefully more events will follow. But I totally think this is just an awesome project, and I'm hoping that council is supportive, recognizing that everything is expensive these days, but we've got some help. And the timing is right, and we've been talking about it, in my estimation, for just about 6 years. So I'm excited to finally get the ball rolling. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Originally, I was going to vote against this, but after learning this evening that COA is going to contribute $250,000, I will be voting in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Hurtle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When looking at the longevity of this project, how long it will last, and the per-year cost, and then the usage of the lake and potentially usage of the facilities annually, to me, it's very logical to fund this, and especially with the ACOA funding coming in, and especially a cherry on top that a local construction company is able to get the contract. Thank you. So I'll be voting in favor of this.
Thank you, Councillor Hurtle. I don't know what's happening with my lights here is the reason I'm smiling, and for the camera, of course. Any other debate or discussion? Seeing none, my only comment is that I too, councillors, I was just, as Councillor Armstrong was, blown away by the original amount that was. When you talk about $1 million washrooms, it's moving, if I may put it that way, no pun intended. And but I'm thankful. I'll express my thanks now, as has already been expressed by 2 other councillors, to ACOA for their contribution to the project, and it is, as the Deputy Mayor said, a shining jewel in the crown of the municipality. Those who haven't experienced Aylesford Lake Beach should really do so. And so I, too, will be supporting the motion. All those in favor or otherwise of the motion, please vote now. That's unanimously passed. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Did you have anything further, sir? No? I noticed you were staying close to the mic in case we turned it down. I don't know what you were going to say. So that brings us to item 10 on the agenda, financial services. And it's 8:15, so we may well be on target here. Item A under item number 10 is Housing Nova Scotia 2021-2022 expense approval, and Ms. Roofs is here to present on that particular item. Ms. Roofs, your light is on when you're ready.
Thank you. My presentation today focuses on the 21-22 contribution to Housing Nova Scotia, so the contribution for the last fiscal year. On July 1st, 2022, Housing Nova Scotia sent a letter requesting payment of the municipality of the County of King's share of the 21-22 deficit for the housing stock in the county for a total amount of $347,147. This amount is $63,047 above the amount budgeted, and it's an increase from the historic annual amounts, which you can see on the screen, which have ranged from $198,000 to $256,000 over the past 5 years, and represents a 35% increase year over year. The 2021-22 budgeted amount that was put into the Municipality of King's budget was based on the upper end of the 2020-21 range that was provided by Housing Nova Scotia, and was the most recent estimate available at the time that we set our budget. Subsequent to the 21-22 budget approval, Housing Nova Scotia provided an estimated contribution range of $282,000 to $345,000. The actual amount of $347,000 does fall within the 10% of the maximum previously reported range by Housing Nova Scotia. Therefore, no updates were provided to the municipality during the 21-22 fiscal year. Per Housing Nova Scotia financial reporting policies, municipal staff had requested updates throughout the year, but none were made available. Over the past year, the municipality has provided Housing Nova Scotia with concerns over the escalating cost and condition of housing units. On March 15th, 2022, Housing Nova Scotia presented to Council in response to these concerns. The municipality continues to voice concerns and to push for more timely and complete communications from Housing Nova Scotia. Given the recent communication of the municipality's concerns and responding presentation by Housing Nova Scotia, staff are recommending that payment of the municipality's share of the 21-22 deficit be approved, but that ongoing concerns continue to be communicated both directly with the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing and also through the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities. The financial implications of this will result in an additional expense of $63,047 coming out of the 21-22 fiscal year, and staff will continue to monitor the 22-23 fiscal results and will continue discussions with the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing about improvements to the budgeting and communication process in relation to the Housing Authority. If there's any questions for my presentation.
Thank you. The ultimate recommendation will be that Municipal Council approve that additional expense of $63,047 above the budgeted amount for 21-22 in relation to what's referred to as the Western Regional Housing Authority. So there are questions of clarification. I suspect there will be lots of comments during the debate. Questions of clarification? I see none. Thank you, Ms. Roos. Do I have a mover of the recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Meisner, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion on the motion begins with Councillor Hurtle. Councillor Hurtle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And maybe controversially, I'll be voting against this motion. Budgeted, we've already budgeted a substantial sum of money going into this under guidance from the Housing Authority. And to go over it by such a fantastical amount just kind of absolutely amazes me. And then throughout the progress of the year, asking for updates and receiving none, except for the one where a large number of people showed up with potentially unsatisfactory explanation, in my opinion. I simply can't support this, so I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hurdle. Councillor Armstrong.
I think that the past council that I sat on and this council are well aware of my opinion of Housing Nova Scotia. And the thought that they invested $347,000 into the housing units, which I see every day, blows my mind. On principle alone, I will not support this. As far as I'm concerned, the March 15th, I won't call it a meeting, entertainment that we had from Housing Nova Scotia was lacking. And I think everybody's more than well aware that I live within throwing distance of 2 of their neighborhoods. And yeah, I'm voting against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other discussion or debate? Councillor Meisner.
I also will not be voting in favor of this. Without any clarity on the improvement or projects that will be moving forward to better their properties, as has been already stated, we were not given any clear direction on what their plan is. And I, too, don't see where this extra money has been spent or allocated. So I will not be voting in favor of this.
Thank you, Councillor Meisner. Councillor Harding.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if we don't agree with this and don't vote on it, what happens next?
Well, we have an agreement with the province of Nova Scotia, and they would take the position, I presume, that we have a contractual obligation to pay the amount of money. We, in fact, withheld it pending getting some satisfactory responses from them. And they have purported to give us those satisfactory responses in the form of the meeting at which they had several, 5, I believe, personnel present, whom we had the opportunity to ask questions of at the time. And I fully understand the comments of other councillors that the answers that were forthcoming were not completely satisfactory, particularly in relation to the fact that we're to contribute to the operational expenses, not the capital expenses of these properties. And it is a large sum on an annual basis. And to have the the very large bump in the amount caused us to take a pause in our payments. But they'll be looking to us for this payment in one form or another. Does that respond to your question, Councillor?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I just wanted to say that I think if we vote this down this evening, it's sending a message again and again to Housing Nova Scotia that we are dissatisfied with the amount of money that we are spending on units that they are not maintaining. Just a case in point, I live again, next to one of their developments in Kingston. And this summer, one single-unit house sat empty and is still sitting empty with the housing crisis that we have going on right now in Nova Scotia. And this unit sat empty, I think, from the 1st of July and is still empty today. And it took 2 dumpsters to clean it out and a cleaning company for almost 6 weeks. That tells you what kind of condition that was in when these people moved out or were put out, I don't know. And then they come back and say they want $347,000 to keep these units up and that they're good neighbors. I'm sorry, but that's not what I'm seeing here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hurdle, you're passing. Okay. Any further comments or debate? If not, then I'll just express my point of view on whether, on the fact that I'm voting in favor of the motion, very begrudgingly so, simply because of our contractual obligation. But this has to stop, in my view. They're not doing the job that we look to them to do. If they are charging us for maintaining these properties, then the maintenance is not visible to us. And if they're allowing the occupants of the properties, and I don't know that this is the case, so I'm not casting any aspersions on the occupants of the properties, but if they were allowing the properties to become run down, either from the inside out or the outside in, then they're not maintaining them. They're not doing their job. And it seems reasonable to me that if they own the properties, they should inspect them from time to time, and they should be on top of this, rather than letting it grow to a state at which this kind of money is required from the municipalities. This, as older folks in the room would know, this housing issue used to be on the municipal side of the budget before service exchange in '95, and in '95 it became a provincial matter, subject to the municipalities being obliged to pay a portion of the operating expense, proportionate to the number of properties which were located in their municipality. The difficulty, of course, with that is that they choose to say that any amount that they spend on a property over a certain amount of money, notwithstanding that I would call it a capital expense, they refer to as operating and add it to the operating monies that they charge municipalities. It's not satisfactory. But we are staying on them, intend to stay on them, and will continue to press them. But this is a financial obligation that we should be getting off our books, in my opinion, and that will be the reason that I'm voting in favor of the motion. Now, anything arising from any of the comments that have been made that anybody wishes to speak to? If not, all those in favor or otherwise of the motion to pay the $63,047, please vote no. The motion, my soul and body, is 4 in favor and 5 against. The motion is defeated. So we go back, Ms. Roofs, to the table to see what administration would like to do with that particular outcome. Thank you all for your input, and I totally understand why you've defeated the motion. Item 10B, 2022-2023 Capital Investment Plan and Canada Community Building Fund allocation to villages. And Mr. Livingston will be presenting on this particular item. Welcome, Mr. Livingston.
Good evening, thank you. I'll be presenting 2 elements here, the Capital Investment Plan, or CIP, and then the allocation of Canada Community Building Fund to the municipality and its 7 villages, or Canada Community Building Fund, abbreviated to CCBF. So the first item I'll touch on is the CIP. So the CIP includes the capital budgets of the municipality and its 7 villages. It also includes the 5-year capital plans for all of the entities included. It identifies the sources of funding for each project, and very relevantly is the Canada Community Building Fund portion of projects allocated to the projects. It's important to note that the projects that are receiving an allocation of CCBF are required to be eligible projects, and that is loosely defined as a project with expenditures for acquiring, constructing, or renovating tangible capital assets. More recently, eligible projects might also be capacity building projects related to strengthening the ability of municipalities to improve local and regional planning, for instance. The CIP comes together from the prepared municipal and village capital budgets and 5-year plans. We have determined that the CCBF funded projects are eligible projects, and the CIP includes a total of 136 projects across the municipality and the 7 villages, and details of all the cost figures of those various projects are detailed, and across the 5-year time span is detailed in Appendix B to the request for decision. The CIP budget Year 1, Appendix B, Part 1, lists all of the projects planned for the 5-year period. It details the amounts to be spent in the first year, and it details the sources of funding for all the projects, as I had previously indicated. It also details the cumulative spending from back as far as fiscal 2014-15. The Municipality of Kings projects in the CIP is exactly related to the capital budget that was approved for fiscal 22-23, and as such it contains our just over $21.2 million worth of projects. The total budgeted projects for the villages is just a little over $9 million. The CIP across years 2 through 5, it lists out all the projects planned over that period, the amounts to be spent over those next 4 years following the current, and once again, the sources of funding. For the municipality over the remaining 4 years, there's just over $27.1 million worth of projects, utilizing CCBF funding of a little over $6.1 million. For villages, there's a total of $17.8 million worth of projects, which are planned to utilize almost $3.3 million worth of CCBF. So with all that talk of CCBF, we'll roll into that portion of the presentation. Quick little detail on CCBF itself. It's a federal program delivered to municipalities through the province. The current agreement for CCBF expires March 31st, 2024. The CIP document is prepared with the idea that a funding agreement will be renewed into the future, and as such it contemplates it assuming similar annual allocations of that funding over that period where there wouldn't currently be an agreement covering the time frame. And the regular allocation of CCBF for fiscal 22-23 is $2,203,281. So our obligations in relation to obtaining and utilizing these funds are a few types of reports that are required to be filed. There's a pre-construction report primarily related to communications of projects and the proper use of signage. There's annual expenditure reports, which detail the exact spending of CCBF funds in a given period. And then there's, of course, the CIP, which I'm presenting tonight, that is also a required filing. As well, there are communications protocols that need to be followed, and like I said, some signage requirements for projects. The municipality made the decision back in September of 2012 for a formula of allocating CCBF funds out to villages. That formula is based on villages' proportionate share of their investment in water and wastewater infrastructure. And accordingly, some villages receive an allocation using that formula, and others receive CCBF by some other means, which I'll touch on shortly. On this slide, there's a table that demonstrates the total infrastructure value for the villages, Canning, Kingston, New Minas, Port Williams, that have owned infrastructure. And as a result, their allocation of the a little over $2.2 million of CCBF in the current year. So to describe the situation a little bit further with the villages, 4 villages, which I had just listed, who have infrastructure, receive an automatic annual allocation based on that formula that was established in 2012. And then the remaining 3 villages without their own owned water or wastewater infrastructure apply on an annual basis to the municipality for an allocation of the municipal portion of CCBF funds for them to undertake projects. So, of course, council must evaluate the merits of those projects against projects of our own in determining what types of funding allocations we would like to make. So a little more detail on allocated villages. So villages with an annual allocation are able to reserve unspent funds to carry forward or save up, as it were, for projects in a future date that maybe have a higher price tag than perhaps their annual allocation might allow in a given fiscal period. On the other hand, non-allocated villages who need to get their projects approved for allocation generally wouldn't be able to have a similar carryover except for on a project-by-project basis. And quickly note that 2 villages from the non-allocated bunch have applied for funding in fiscal 22-23. So now I'll touch on some of the village projects. Starting with the village of New Minas, which is an allocated village. They're looking to supply and install radio frequency meter reading boxes for water meters. They're also looking to supply and install water meters at new and existing locations. And they have a water tank inspection related to a previous year refurbishment out in Woodvale. Some more projects for the village of New Minas include sewer lift pump replacements on Cara Ann Crescent, water lateral replacements on Alders Avenue, and a water well on Jones Road. Moving on to the village of Port Williams, another allocated village. They're looking to spend on a splash pad at the Port Williams Park, sidewalk construction along Collins Road, and the skating pond upgrades on Belzer Street. Now the village of Kingston, another allocated village. They're looking to spend on a sidewalk along Main Street in the current period. Moving on to Canning, our final allocated village. They're looking to spend on a sidewalk along Chapel Road, as well as a water line replacement along Chapel Road as well. The work along Chapel Road is part of a joint project with the municipality to replace both the water and sewer lines along that segment of road. So now getting into the non-allocated villages, we'll start with the village of Aylesford. 2 projects here, both sidewalks on Victoria Road and Pine Avenue. The request on Victoria Road, they're requesting an additional allocation of CCBF for this project due to the overall increase in project costs for this particular project. The previously approved amount was $196,000, and since the total project costs are expected to increase from around $250,000, increasing from $295,000 to $375,000. They're asking for an additional $53,000 to bring the total CCBF allocation for that project up to $250,000. The Pine Ave is a similar situation. Total project costs are increasing from $70,000 to $90,000, and once again, they're looking for an increase in the CCBF allocation to offset that increase, or offset their 66% portion of that increase. Moving on to the village of Cornwallis Square, the second non-allocated village. There's a rest area project along the Harvest Moon Trail. There's a modest request here to, once again, offset slightly higher than originally anticipated spending for this project. The additional request is $63 to bring the total CCBF request to an even $5,000 for that project. And then the other project is the firefighter training tower. There's some extra material in the agenda package that details out the plan for the firefighting tower, as well as some support from the other fire departments around the construction of a 3-story firefighting training tower, which would be used for, of course, training purposes and doing those types of drills. The total project budget is $290,000, and the CCBF request totals $193,000. And finally, as I mentioned, only 2 of the 3 non-allocated villages applied for funding. The village of Greenwood, being the final of our 7 villages, do not have a project planned for 22-23. So quickly, the financial implications overall for the non-allocated village applications. The total CCBF request is $508,343. Portion of that is carryover of previously approved CCBF funding for the village of Aylesford, $243,000, and Cornwallis Square, $4,937 carried forward. Some additional details available in the appendices. Appendix A goes through a sort of reconciliation of opening balances, proposed allocations, the spending, and then looks at closing CCBF balances, and also prepares a reconciliation of our general ledger balances. So demonstration of the continuity of those funds. So finally, quickly touch on implementation. The capital, pending approval by council, the capital investment plan will be filed with the province, and villages throughout the year will submit their claims for CCBF funding in order to access disbursements of those funds throughout the year. All that leading to a pair of recommendations. The first, that municipal council approve the 2022-23 Canada Community Building Fund allocations and use for village projects as detailed in Appendix A of the September 6, 2022 request for decision, and that municipal council approve the 2022-23 5-year capital investment plan as detailed in Appendix B of the September 6, 2022 request for decision. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. Any questions of clarification for Mr. Livingston? All pretty clear. Certainly well delivered, Mr. Livingston. Obvious from the fact there are no questions for you, so thank you for your presentation. Dealing with the recommendations, Council, I'll ask for a motion concerning each of the recommendations. First of all, 10B1, that Municipal Council approve the 2022-23 Canada Community Building Fund allocations and use for village projects as detailed in Appendix A of the September 6, 2022 request for decision. Do I have a mover of the motion? Moved by Councillor Gillum, seconded by Councillor Granger. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor or otherwise, please vote now. It's unanimously passed. Thank you. And dealing with recommendation number 2, that Municipal Council approve the 2022-2023 5-year capital investment plan as detailed in Appendix B of the September 6, 2022 request for decision. The mover of the motion, the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Hurtle. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor or otherwise of the motion, please vote now. That's unanimously passed. Thank you. Moving on to item 11, correspondence. Could I have a motion to receive the I'm sorry, Councillor Granger. You had your light on. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we move on, I just wanted to once again congratulate the Financial Services Department for their award that they had won earlier this year, a couple months ago actually, the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the 22-23 fiscal year. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them.
Thank you, Councillor Granger. I'm sure that we all join in that, and I appreciate you bringing it up. I saw the emails all floating toward the department, and Mr. Barr is stoically taking the congratulations over there. A motion to receive the correspondence was moved by Councillor Hurtle, seconded by whom? I see. Councillor Granger is over there. If the camera's looking for her. Thank you, Councillor Granger. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor or otherwise, please vote now. While we're waiting for the results of the motion, we did have a letter dated August the 17th from Roger Smith regarding zoning, and we've all had an opportunity to read that, of course, and digest it. On August the 19th, we had a letter from Annapolis Valley Regional Library containing their annual report, and on August the 8th, we had a communication regarding the Conference of International Network of Michelin Cities. And I hope all of Council read that and that we can have discussions about it at a later time regarding the value of that. I happen to feel that there is value in maintaining our relationship there. And item D, a letter from the Nova Scotia Gaming Corporation indicating that they're a valuable organization that contributes to the province. No further comment. The motion was passed. Thank you very much. Down to board and committee reports. I'm sorry, Councillor Hurtle, your light was on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just going back to the letter from Mr. Smith, he lives in my district, so I'm feeling I need to ask a question of staff if this has landed with staff for consideration upon his request.
Thank you. Perhaps I'll not put any, I don't see no lights flashing, so I'll not put staff in the hot seat at the present time, but if you could direct the question to them immediately following the meeting. Thank you for bringing it up, and I'm sure that your constituent appreciates the question as well. We'll ensure, of course, that it has come to the attention of staff.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Moving to board and committee reports, I'm looking at Councillor Harding with the question as to whether you have anything further to report on Kings Point to Point beyond what you've delivered in writing.
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the councillor on his report? None. Other reports, external boards, committee reports, are there any other verbal reports to give? No others have been received in writing. It has not been an active month, so it's understandable that there are no further reports. Committees of council, no further verbal reports. So a motion to receive the report of Councillor Harding. Moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Meisner. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor or otherwise, please vote now. The vote is unanimous, the Deputy Mayor being absent from her seat for a moment. Is there any other business to come before the meeting? Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to pass along regrets from Councillor Windsor. Apparently the Monday holiday threw him off his schedule and he missed the meeting. So I'll just pass that.
Thank you, Councillor. Him having contacted you with his excuse for having been absent, would you like to move a motion excusing his attendance?
Yes, of course.
Could I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Allen. Any discussion? Councillor Killam?
No, not on this.
Okay, thank you. No discussion on the motion. All those in favor or otherwise of excusing Councillor Windsor's attendance from this meeting, please vote now. That's unanimously passed. Thank you. Any other business to come before the meeting? Councillor Killam.
Thank you, Mayor. Just an update. A couple things in my district. Maybe other councillors are aware that the fiber got cut up in the mountain and there was internet service interruption for quite a few people for a couple days. But I understand now it's been corrected. And also, coming up is the issue over herbicide spraying in woodlands on the North Mountain, and that will be hopefully be a presentation on Committee of the Whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Killam. Any other business? Moving on then, I'm looking to public comments, and the public has left the building. Is there nothing else? I'm looking for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Allen, seconded by Councillor Harding. All those in favor or otherwise, please vote now. I'm happy to say that we were able to complete the agenda before 9 o'clock, which would have been the adjourn time in any event. Thank you all for your attendance. We have a unanimous vote, save one councillor who wishes to remain in the building for the balance of the evening, and I grant him that. Councillor Hurtle. We are adjourned.